Terry thought she was safe in her own home, until she saw her neighbor Doug taping her dog's mouth shut. As Doug's sinister actions unfolded, Terry realized her family was in grave danger. The sheriff arrived just in time, but would he believe Terry's story? Or would Doug's lies tear her world apart? Terry rushed home, heart pounding. The image of Doug taping her dog's mouth burned into her mind. She burst through the front door, nearly tripping over her son's backpack. "Mom, what's wrong?" her 8-year-old daughter Lily asked, alarmed by the wild look in Terry's eyes. "Get upstairs and lock the door. Don't come out until I say it's safe," Terry commanded, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She grabbed the baseball bat from the entryway closet and peered out the window, searching the quiet suburban street. Doug's car was still parked in front of his house. Terry racked her brain, trying to make sense of what she'd just witnessed. Why would he do something so cruel? And more importantly, what was his motive? The front door flew open, making Terry jump. Doug barged in, his face flushed with anger. "Where is he?" he yelled, nostrils flaring. "Where's that damn dog?" Terry tightened her grip on the bat, her knuckles turning white. "Get out of my house, Doug. I'm calling the sheriff." "Oh, you're calling the sheriff, are you?" Doug sneered. "Good luck getting them to believe your little story." He stepped closer, eyes narrowed. "That dog was harassing my kids. I was just trying to keep it quiet." "By taping its mouth shut?" Terry scoffed. "That's animal abuse, and I have proof. Now get out before I bash your skull in." Doug let out a harsh laugh. "Proof? Nobody's going to believe a crazy lady like you over an upstanding member of the HOA. Face it, Terry, you're finished." The sound of sirens in the distance made Doug's face fall. He turned and raced out the door, slamming it behind him. Terry let out a shaky breath, her legs trembling. She hurried to the kitchen and grabbed a steak knife, then rushed outside to find her dog, Buddy, whimpering in the bushes, the tape still clinging to his muzzle. "Oh, Buddy," Terry said, her voice cracking as she gently removed the tape. "I'm so sorry, sweetie. You're safe now." The sheriff's car pulled up, its lights flashing. Terry stood, clutching Buddy protectively, and braced herself for what was to come. The sheriff approached Terry cautiously, his hand resting on his holster. "Ma'am, I got a call about a disturbance. What seems to be the problem?" Terry took a deep breath, trying to collect her thoughts. "Officer, my neighbor, Doug, he just barged into my house and threatened me. I saw him taping my dog's mouth shut earlier, and I have the proof right here." She held up the steak knife with the tape still clinging to it. The sheriff glanced at the evidence, then turned to look at Doug, who was standing on his porch, his arms crossed defiantly. "Is that true, sir?" the officer asked. Doug's eyes narrowed. "Of course not. This woman is completely unstable. She's been harassing me and my family for weeks." Terry's stomach dropped. She should have known Doug would try to twist the story. "That's not true," she exclaimed. "He came into my house and—" The sheriff held up a hand to silence her. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but I need you to stay calm and let me handle this." He turned back to Doug. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come down to the station and answer a few questions." Doug's face reddened with anger. "You can't be serious. I'm the victim here. This woman is clearly unhinged." The sheriff's expression remained impassive. "I'm sorry, sir, but I have to follow protocol. Please come with me." Doug shot Terry a venomous glare before reluctantly getting into the back of the patrol car. Terry watched, her heart racing, as the vehicle pulled away. "Thank you, officer," she said, her voice shaking. "I was so afraid he was going to hurt my family." The sheriff nodded. "I understand, ma'am. We'll get to the bottom of this. In the meantime, I'd suggest you and your family stay inside and lock the doors." As the sheriff drove off, Terry hurried back into the house, her mind racing. She knew Doug would do everything in his power to turn the situation in his favor. She had to be prepared for the fight of her life. Terry paced back and forth in the living room, her mind racing. She knew Doug would be doing everything in his power to turn the situation in his favor. She had to be prepared for the fight of her life. "Mommy, what's going on?" Lily asked, peeking out from the top of the stairs. "Why did the police take Doug away?" Terry forced a smile, trying to keep her voice calm. "Everything's going to be okay, sweetie. The sheriff just needs to ask Doug a few questions." "But I'm scared," Lily said, her eyes welling with tears. "What if he comes back and hurts us?" Terry hurried to the stairs and pulled Lily into a tight hug. "I won't let that happen, I promise. I'm going to keep you and your brother safe, no matter what." Lily nodded, burying her face in Terry's shoulder. Terry held her for a long moment, her own fears churning beneath the surface. She knew Doug was powerful and influential within the HOA, and she couldn't imagine the lengths he might go to discredit her. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made Terry's heart leap. She peered out the window, clutching Lily's hand, and let out a sigh of relief as she recognized her husband's car. "Daddy's home," Lily exclaimed, her mood instantly lifting. Terry opened the door as her husband, Matt, hurried up the porch steps. "What's going on?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "The sheriff just called me, said there was an incident with Doug and something about our dog." Terry quickly recounted the events of the afternoon, her hands trembling as she spoke. Matt's face darkened with anger. "That son of a bitch. I knew he was trouble, but this is a whole new level of cruelty." He pulled Terry and Lily into a tight embrace. "Don't worry, we're going to get through this together. I won't let Doug or anyone else hurt this family." Terry nodded, feeling a surge of hope. With Matt by her side, she knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. But as the sun began to set, she couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The next morning, Terry clutched her coffee mug, her nerves on edge as she watched Lily and her younger brother, Tyler, board the school bus. She hated the idea of them being out of her sight, especially with Doug still on the loose. As the bus disappeared down the street, Terry turned to Matt, who was loading his briefcase into his car. "I don't think the kids should go to school today," she said, her voice tinged with worry. "What if Doug comes after them?" Matt placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Honey, I know you're scared, but the kids will be safe at school. The sheriff said he's keeping an eye on Doug, and the school has security measures in place." Terry nodded reluctantly, knowing Matt was right. She couldn't keep them home forever. "I'll call the school and let them know about the situation," Matt continued. "And I'll try to get home early. We'll all stick together until this blows over, okay?" Terry managed a small smile, grateful for Matt's steadfast support. As he drove off, she returned to the house, her mind whirling with 1,000 worst-case scenarios. Her phone suddenly rang, and Terry's heart leaped into her throat when she saw Doug's name on the caller ID. "Stealing herself," she answered. "What do you want, Doug?" "Terry, we need to talk," Doug said, his voice surprisingly calm. "I think there's been a misunderstanding, and I'd like to clear the air." Terry scoffed. "A misunderstanding? You barged into my house and threatened me." "That's not how I remember it," Doug replied smoothly. "Look, I'm willing to let bygones be bygones if you are. Why don't we meet for coffee and sort this out like adults?" Terry's grip on the phone tightened. "I'm not going anywhere with you, Doug. You're lucky the sheriff didn't throw you in jail." "Oh, I think you'll want to hear what I have to say," Doug said, a hint of smugness in his tone. "Unless, of course, you're willing to risk your kid's safety." Terry's blood ran cold. "Are you threatening me?" "Not at all," Doug said, his voice dripping with false concern. "I just think it would be best if we talked, for everyone's sake. How about this afternoon at the cafe on Main Street?" Terry hesitated, her mind racing. She knew better than to trust Doug, but the thought of her children being in danger made her feel sick to her stomach. Fine, she relented, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll be there. Excellent, Doug purred. I'll see you then, Terry. As the line went dead, Terry sank into a chair, her hands trembling. She had a terrible feeling that she was walking into a trap, but she couldn't risk her kids' safety. She would have to be on her guard and ready for anything. Terry's hands shook as she pushed open the door to the cafe, her eyes scanning the crowded room for Doug. She spotted him in the corner, sipping a steaming mug of coffee and looking entirely too pleased with himself. Taking a deep breath, Terry approached the table and slid into the chair across from him. Glad you could make it, Doug said, the corners of his mouth turning up in a smug smile. Terry didn't return the sentiment. What do you want, Doug? Well, as I mentioned on the phone, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Doug leaned forward, his expression suddenly serious. I want to clear the air and make sure there's no bad blood between us. Terry scoffed. You're the one who barged into my house and threatened me. How exactly do you plan to clear the air? Doug held up a hand. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The way I see it, we both have something the other wants. Terry felt a chill run down her spine. What are you talking about? It's simple, really, Doug said, his voice low and conspiratorial. You want to keep your family safe, and I want to avoid any, shall we say, unpleasant consequences. Terry's heart raced as the implication sank in. Are you trying to blackmail me? Doug leaned back in his chair, a smug grin spreading across his face. Blackmail is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. Terry's hands clenched into fists. I'm not going to play your sick little game, Doug. If you think for 1 second that I'm going to let you. Doug interrupted, wagging a finger. I wouldn't be so hasty if I were you. After all, you wouldn't want anything to happen to those adorable little children of yours, would you? Terry's blood ran cold. You stay away from my kids, you bastard. Doug chuckled. Relax, Terry. I'm not interested in your kids. I just want you to keep your mouth shut about the little incident with your dog. In exchange, I'll make sure your family stays safe. Terry's mind raced, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she couldn't trust Doug, but the thought of her children being in danger was too much to bear. Fine, she ground out through clenched teeth. What do you want me to do? Doug's grin widened. I knew you'd see it my way. All I need is for you to sign a little affidavit saying that you were mistaken of the whole dog incident. After that, we can put this whole ugly business behind us. Terry stared at him in disbelief. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm very serious, Doug said, his eyes hardening. So, what's it going to be, Terry? Your family's safety or your pride? Terry felt her stomach twist with anguish and rage. She knew she had no choice but to comply, but the thought of betraying her own integrity and letting Doug get away with his crimes made her sick to her stomach. With a trembling hand, she reached for the pen and paper he had placed on the table. Terry's hand hovered over the pen, her mind racing. She couldn't believe she was being forced to sign an affidavit that would essentially exonerate Doug and allow him to get away with his despicable actions. I don't have all day, Terry, Doug said, his voice laced with impatience. Terry glanced around the cafe, hoping to find some way out of this impossible situation. But the other patrons were wrapped up in their own conversations, oblivious to the drama unfolding at their table. Reluctantly, Terry picked up the pen and began to write. As her hand moved across the paper, she felt a crushing sense of defeat. She was betraying everything she believed in to protect her family, and the guilt was overwhelming. There, that's a good girl, Doug said, snatching the affidavit from her. He quickly scanned the document, then tucked it into his briefcase with a satisfied nod. Well, this has been a productive little chat, don't you think? He said, flashing Terry a triumphant grin. Terry felt sick to her stomach. I hope you're happy, Doug. You've won. "Oh, I am happy," Doug replied, his eyes gleaming. "And you know what they say, the ends justify the means. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some important HOA business to attend to." As Doug rose from the table and strode out of the cafe, Terry felt a renewed sense of determination. She couldn't let Doug get away with this, no matter the cost. Grabbing her coat, she rushed out of the cafe and hurried to her car. She had to get home and warn Matt about what had just happened. Together, they would find a way to expose Doug's lies and hold him accountable for his actions. When Terry burst through the front door, Matt was waiting for her, a concerned look on his face. "Honey, what's wrong?" "I got your message. You sounded really upset." Terry quickly recounted the events at the cafe, her voice trembling with emotion. "Doug blackmailed me, Matt," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "He threatened our family and made me sign some kind of affidavit saying I was mistaken about the dog incident." Matt's face darkened with fury. "That son of a bitch. I knew he was up to no good." He pulled Terry into a tight embrace, and she clung to him, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. "We can't let him get away with this, Matt," she said, her voice muffled against his chest. "We have to find a way to expose him and clear my name." Matt nodded, his expression grim. "Don't worry, Terry. We're in this together. We'll figure out a way to take that bastard down, no matter what it takes." As they held each other, Terry felt a glimmer of hope. With Matt by her side, she knew they could confront this challenge head-on. But the road ahead was going to be a long and difficult one. Terry paced the living room, her mind racing with a dizzying array of thoughts and emotions. She had spent the last few days feeling powerless, trapped in a nightmare of Doug's own making. But now, with Matt by her side, she was determined to fight back. "Okay, let's go over this again," Matt said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Doug blackmailed you into signing an affidavit, saying you were mistaken about the dog incident in exchange for leaving our family alone." Terry nodded, her hands clenching into fists. "Yes, and I'm sure he's already submitted an affidavit to the HOA. They'll probably use it to discredit me and sweep the whole thing under the rug." Matt reached out and squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Don't worry, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to expose Doug's lies and make sure he pays for what he's done." Terry took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. But how? Doug's got the entire HOA wrapped around his finger. They're not going to just take my word over his. "That's where you're wrong," Matt said, a determined glint in his eye. "Doug may have the HOA fooled, but he made one crucial mistake. He left a trail of evidence." Terry's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" Matt grinned. "Well, for starters, we have the tape he used on Buddy and the knife you used to remove it. That's physical evidence of his crime." Terry nodded, a spark of hope igniting within her. "And the sheriff saw that evidence when he came to the house. Maybe he can use it to corroborate my story." "Exactly," Matt said. "Plus, I've been doing some digging of my own. Turns out Doug has a history of shady behavior within the HOA, everything from embezzlement to intimidation tactics." Terry felt a surge of excitement. If we can uncover his past misdeeds and connect them to this latest incident, we might just have a chance of taking him down. Matt nodded, his expression grim. "It won't be easy, and Doug will fight us every step of the way. But we have to try. For our family, and for the sake of everyone else he's trampled on." Terry reached out and pulled Matt into a tight embrace. "I'm so grateful to have you in my corner. I don't know what I'd do without you." Matt kissed the top of her head, his arms wrapped around her protectively. "We're in this together, Terry. No matter what, I'm not going to let that bastard hurt our family." As they held each other, Terry felt a newfound sense of determination. With Matt by her side, she was ready to take on Doug and the entire HOA if necessary. This was a fight she couldn't afford to lose. The following week, Terry and Matt sat across from the sheriff their hearts pounding as they presented their evidence against Doug. "So, let me get this straight," the sheriff said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "You're telling me that your neighbor, Doug, not only trespassed on your property and abused your dog, but he also blackmailed you into signing a false affidavit to cover up his crimes." Terry nodded, her hands trembling. "That's exactly what happened, Sheriff. We have the physical evidence, and we've uncovered a pattern of shady behavior from Doug within the HOA." The sheriff leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. "This is a serious accusation, and if it's true, it could have some far-reaching consequences." He turned to Matt. "You said you've been looking into Doug's past misdeeds. What did you find?" Matt quickly outlined the various allegations of embezzlement, intimidation, and abuse of power that they had uncovered. The sheriff listened intently, his brow furrowing deeper with every new revelation. "Well, I have to say, this paints a pretty damning picture of your neighbor," the sheriff said, his voice heavy with concern. "I'm going to need some time to thoroughly investigate this, but if what you're telling me is true, we could be looking at charges ranging from animal cruelty to extortion and fraud." Terry felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Does this mean you believe us, Sheriff?" The sheriff nodded. "I'm inclined to, yes. The evidence you've brought forward is quite compelling, and it aligns with the initial report I filed regarding the dog incident." He leaned forward, his expression hardening. "But I want to make one thing clear. If you're playing some kind of game here, if any of this turns out to be a lie, you're going to be in a whole heap of trouble. Do you understand?" Terry and Matt both nodded, their faces serious. "Good," the sheriff said, standing up from his desk. "I'll be in touch once I've had a chance to look into this further. In the meantime, I'd advise you both to stay out of Doug's way and let us handle this." As they left the sheriff's office, Terry and Matt felt a sense of cautious optimism. They had taken the first step in their crusade against Doug, and with the law on their side, they finally had a chance of exposing his lies and clearing Terry's name. But they knew the battle was far from over. Doug would undoubtedly fight tooth and nail to preserve his reputation and position within the HOA. This was a fight that would test their resolve, their resilience, and their unbreakable bond as a family. And Terry was more determined than ever to emerge victorious.